guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a horror comedy from the UK, English language, released in the year 2019, directed by Crispian Mills, and this film is called Slaughterhouse Rules. So Slaughterhouse Rules is about a boarding school, a prestigious boarding school called Slaughterhouse School, and basically their claim to fame is that it's basically the top notch as far as childhood education is concerned. So this wayward teen, the mother basically sends him to this boarding school, so she says that it's his time to shine in life and that this is going to give him every opportunity to do so. So reluctantly, he agrees to attend this school. He goes to the school. Quickly, he makes some friends, and he also starts to have a liking towards one of the girls at this school. So he starts to learn about the history, and he also learns that there are some very strange things occurring in the woods next door to the school. Now, unfortunately, there's a terrifying secret in these woods that is about to be unleashed, and it's going to cause havoc upon these students, and it's going to be a fight for survival. So what that survival is and what the secret in the woods is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now, my thoughts on Slaughterhouse Rules. I didn't even really know about this movie until it was released here in Australia on DVD, so it's definitely a movie that's gone under the radar, which does bring a little bit of skepticism and hesitation coming into it, is that maybe this is not that good. But the reason why I wanted to see it is that, number one, it is a British horror comedy, and they are very well known for this, and also Simon Pegg and Nick Frost are in this movie. Now, they are very famous as far as this type of horror movie is concerned. They were in the trilogy directed by Edgar Wright. You had Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and At World's End, that I thought were brilliant films, and it's really showcased how good a director Edgar Wright is, and so it's good to see that he's gone on to bigger and better things. But those three films really put Simon Pegg and Nick Frost on the map, and so to see them in this movie, I actually thought that was pretty cool. So that's the reason why I wanted to see it, on top of the fact that it is a British comedy, and when British comedy is done very well, horror comedies, they are basically better than anyone else. And so I was hoping that it was going to give me another Shaun of the Dead kind of feel, in that basically the charm of these two specific actors who really made themselves known for this type of movie. So after watching Slaughterhouse Rules, I will say that there are some positives. The biggest positive is that it's a very well made movie. I thought that the overall visuals were very crisp. I thought that the practical effects were very good, and it's also a very violent film, and so that was something I wasn't expecting, is that it's far more than a PG-13 horror film. And so there were some pretty good set pieces, and as I said, the gore effects were actually quite well done and actually fairly disgusting. And so I thought that was definitely a welcome addition as far as horror comedies are concerned. And I thought the acting and the performances from Simon Pegg and Nick Frost were fairly decent. Although they weren't utilised to their full potential, I still thought, alright, well, as I said, it's always good to see them in a movie. But unfortunately, that's where the positives stop, and I come with the negatives. This is a movie that doesn't really work because it's trying something out of its comfort zone. Basically, this wants to be an Edgar Wright film, but it doesn't have the talent that Edgar Wright has, and so it comes off as a little bit of a cheap imitation. So you've got some camera shots that are made very famous from Edgar Wright's, it's called the Cornetto trilogy. So that movie, some of the methods that Edgar Wright uses is actually used in this movie, and I thought, alright, well, it doesn't quite come off because it's not the same caliber of director. And I thought the script didn't really allow the overall comedy aspect to really work, and I didn't think it was overly scary. Is that, yes, it's gory, but the scare effect wasn't really there. And so as far as a horror comedy is concerned, neither genre really takes over, and it just becomes a very lackluster experience. I just thought some of the comedy was quite cringeworthy. I thought, oh god, alright, they're trying to be funny and they actually think they're a lot funnier than they are, but it just doesn't work. And being an Australian, we really gravitate to British humour, and I just didn't really laugh out loud. There were a few chuckles here and there, but it just wasn't that funny. And as I said, when you come to the horror aspect, it just wasn't that scary because it was taking itself way too lightly. And so yes, horror comedies are to be taken lightly, but it was too light for its own good, and therefore the scare factor isn't there. So I didn't really get either horror or comedy from this movie, and that was the biggest disappointment. I just felt as though it was trying to emulate what Edgar Wright does, but when you're emulating such a good director, if you're not up to that caliber, it's going to come off as a missed opportunity. I thought the tone was all over the place. It just didn't know what it wanted to be, and unfortunately it just comes across as a fan-made sort of homage to Edgar Wright, and it just doesn't have enough identity of its own to really make this movie a memorable film. So it's a very disposable British horror comedy. It pains me to say it. There were some set pieces that I thought were good as far as technical ability is concerned, as far as practical effects are concerned, but unfortunately the negatives outweigh the positives, and that is the reason why I'd say probably skip up the opportunity to see this movie. If you haven't seen Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead, or At World's End, I would highly recommend you check out those movies, because as far as British horror comedies are concerned, they are really top notch, but this movie unfortunately falls on the wayside, and as a result of that, I'm only going to give this film 2 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.